series of Halloween video, I thought I would read some urban legends to you. So I'm going to read 3, and I'll leave the links to the stories down below if you'd like to read them. This first one is called Black Aggie. When Felix Agnes put up a life-sized, shrouded bronze statue of a grieving angel seated on a pedestal in the Agnes family plot in the Druid Ridge Cemetery, he had no idea what he had started. The statue was a rather eerie figure by day, frozen in a moment of grief and terrible pain. At night, the figure was almost unbelievably creepy, the shroud over its head obscuring the face until you were up close to it. There was a living air about the grieving angel, as if its arms could easily reach out and grab you if you weren't careful. It didn't take long for rumors to sweep through the town and surrounding countryside. They said that the statue, nicknamed Black Aggie, was haunted by the spirit of a mistreated wife who lay beneath her feet. The statue's eyes would glow red at the stroke of midnight, and any living person who returned the statue's gaze would instantly be struck blind. Any pregnant woman who passed through her shadow would miscarry. If you sat on her lap at night, the statue would come to life and crush you to death in her dark embrace. If you spoke Black Aggie's name 3 times at midnight in front of a dark mirror, the evil angel would appear and pull you down to hell. They also said that spirits of the dead would rise from their graves on dark nights, gather round the statue at night. People began visiting the cemetery just to see the statue, and it was then that the local fraternity decided to make the statue of grief part of their initiation rites. Black Aggie sitting, where candidates for membership had to spend the night crouched beneath the statue with their backs to the grave of General Agnes, became popular. One dark night, 2 fraternity members accompanied a new hopeful to the cemetery and watched while he took his place underneath the creepy statue. The clouds had obscured the moon that night, and the whole area surrounding the dark statue was filled with a sense of anger and malice. It felt as if a storm were brewing in that part of the cemetery, and to their chagrin, the 2 fraternity members noticed that gray shadows seemed to be clustering around the body of the frightened fraternity candidate crouching in front of the statue. What had been a funny initiation rite suddenly took on an air of danger. One of the fraternity brothers stepped forward in alarm to call out to the initiate. As he did, the statue above the boy stirred ominously. The 2 fraternity brothers froze in shock as the shrouded head turned toward the new candidate. They saw the gleam of glowing red eyes beneath the concealing hood as the statue's arms reached out toward the cowering boy. With shouts of alarm, the fraternity brothers leapt forward to rescue the new initiate. But it was too late. The initiate gave one horrified yell, and then his body disappeared into the embrace of the dark angel. The fraternity brothers skidded to a halt as the statue thoughtfully rested its glowing eyes upon them. With gasps of terror, the boys fled from the cemetery before the statue could grab them, too. Hearing the screams, a night watchman hurried to the Agnes plot. Much to his dismay, he discovered the body of a young man lying at the foot of the statue, The young man had apparently died of fright. The disruption caused by the statue grew so acute that the Agnes family finally donated it to the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. The grieving angel sat for many years in storage there, never again to plague the citizens visiting Druid Hill Park Cemetery. Okay. This next one is called Burnt Church. She was sophisticated, poised, and cultured. In retrospect, this should have made them suspicious. A teacher like her should have been presiding over a girls' school in London or New York, not seeking a position in a small town in Georgia. But at the time, they were too delighted by her application to ask any questions. It will be good for our daughter to learn some culture, the attorney's wife told the pastor's wife. And our boy may find some table manners at last, the pastor's wife responded with a smile. School was called into session in the local church shortly after the arrival of the teacher, and soon the children were bringing glowing reports home. Teacher was special. Teacher taught them manners and diction as well as reading, writing, and arithmetic. All the children loved teacher. The parents were delighted by the progress their children were making at school. Teacher had been a real find, a godsend, said the preacher's wife. But not everyone in town was so satisfied. The local ne'er-do-well called Smith had more sinister stories to tell. That woman ain't natural, he told the blacksmith, waving a bottle of whiskey for emphasis. I seen her out in the woods after dark, dancing around a campfire and chanting in a strange language. Nonsense, the blacksmith retorted, calmly hammering an iron bar onto his anvil. They say she's got an altar in her room, and it ain't no altar to the Almighty, Smith insisted, leaning forward and blowing his boozy breath into the blacksmith's face. You're drunk, said the blacksmith, lifting the hot iron so it barred the man from coming any closer. Go home and sleep it off. Smith left the smithy, but he continued to talk wild about the teacher in the weeks that followed. During those weeks, a change gradually came over the school children. The typical hijinks and pranks that all children played lessened. Their laughter died away, and when they did misbehave, it was on a much more ominous scale than before. Items began to disappear from houses and farms. Expensive items like jewelry, farm tools, and money. And when the children talked back to their parents, there was a hard edge to their voices, and they did not apologize for their rudeness, even when punished. And my daughter lied to me the other day, the attorney's wife said to the pastor's wife in distress. I saw her punch her younger brother and steal an apple from him, and she denied it to my face. She practically called me a liar. The games the children play back in the woods frighten me, the pastor's wife confessed. They chant in a strange language, and they move in such a strange manner, almost like a ritual dance. Could it be something they're learning at school? Asked the attorney's wife. Surely not. Teacher is such a sweet, sophisticated lady, said the pastor's wife. But they exchanged uneasy glances. Smith, on the other hand, was sure. That teacher is turning the young'uns to the devil, that's what she's doing, he proclaimed up and down the streets of the town. Don't be ridiculous, the preacher told him when they passed in front of the mercantile. I ain't ridiculous, you're blind, Smith told him. That teacher ought to be burned at the stake like they burned the witches in Salem. The pastor, pale with wrath, ordered Smith out of his sight, but the ne'er-do-well's words rang in his mind and would not be pushed away. And the children continued to behave oddly, almost like they were possessed. He would, the preacher decided reluctantly, his little boy came down with a cold, and his mother kept him home from school. When the pastor returned from his duties for a late lunch, his wife came running up to him as soon as he entered the door. She was pale with fright. "I heard him chanting something over and over again in his bedroom," she gasped. "So I crept to the door to listen. He was saying the Lord's Prayer backwards." The pastor gasped and clutched his Bible to his chest as goosebumps erupted over his body. This was positively satanic, and there was nowhere the boy could have learned such a thing in this town unless he learned it at school. At that moment, the attorney's wife came bursting in the door behind him. "Quick, Pastor, quick," she cried. "Smith is running through town with a torch, talking about burning down the school. The children are still in class." The pastor raced out of the house with the two women at his heels. They and the other townsfolk who followed them were met by a huge cloud of smoke coming from the direction of the church, where the school children had their lessons. The building was already ablaze as frantic parents beat at the flames with wet sacks or threw buckets of water from the pump into the inferno. Smith could be heard cackling unrepentantly from the far side of the building, which was full of the screams of the trapped students and their teacher. The fire blazed with a supernatural kind of force, and the pastor thought he heard the sound of the teacher laughing from within the building when it became apparent that no one could be saved. The church burned for several hours, and when it was finally extinguished, there was nothing left. Mourning parents tried to find something of their children to bury, and Smith wisely disappeared from town, his mission against the works of Satan completed. The teacher's burned body was buried deep in the ground and covered with a brick tomb. The children's smaller bodies were interred beneath wooden crosses. All of the students in the school that fall, and only the pastor's small son survived. To this day, voices can be heard in the graveyard at the burnt church, chanting unintelligible words, as the school children and teacher once chanted in the woods outside town. Sometimes apparitions are seen, and dark walkers who roam the graveyard at night, and they say that a brick taken from the grave of the evil teacher can set fire to objects on which they are placed. Alright, and the last one is probably one you folks have heard before. It's called the vanishing hitchhiker. A newlywed couple, Nathan and Heather, were driving up the northern California coast to spend their dream honeymoon in a quaint bed and breakfast with a seaside view. They had hoped to arrive before dark, but a heavy fog had descended on Highway 1, and their progress was slow. They were at least an hour and a half from their destination as night fell. If you've ever driven that stretch of highway, you know how torturous it can be with its narrow lanes and switchback curves. It was just as they were rounding one of those curves that they passed a solitary hitchhiker, a young woman in a wispy white dress, standing on the shoulder with thumb outstretched. "Good luck getting a ride on a night like this," muttered Nathan under his breath. "Stop the car and turn around," said Heather. "Please, she's all alone. We have to give her a ride. We're 2 hours late. Please." Nathan pulled off the road and turned around. As they approached the girl from the opposite direction, they could see her dress was in tatters. Her face was pale and gaunt. "Can we give you a ride?" Heather asked as they pulled up beside her. "Oh, thank you," said the young woman, who appeared to be in her late teens or early 20s. "I have to get home. My parents will be worried sick." "Where do you live?" asked Nathan. "Just down the road, about 10 miles, she said, climbing into the back seat. "There's an intersection with an abandoned gas station. Across from there, it's a white house with a rose garden. They're waiting for me." As they made their way north again, Heather attempted to make conversation, but the girl fell silent and slumped in the back seat, apparently asleep. After about 15 minutes, United Service Station. Is this it? He asked. Hey, is this the intersection? Heather turned to wake the young woman and caught her breath. Nathan, she's gone. What do you mean she's gone? Nathan said, pulling into the driveway of the White House. How can she be gone? But she was right. The hitchhiker had vanished. A light came on and two people, an elderly couple, stepped out onto the porch. Can we help you? The man asked. He looked as though he dreaded hearing the answer. I don't know, Nathan began. We were driving and we picked up this hitchhiker, a girl, and she gave you this address, said the man, and asked you to bring her home. Yes, said Heather. And then she was gone. Heather nodded. You aren't crazy, the man said, and you're not the first. She was our daughter. Her name was Diane. She passed away 7 years ago, killed by a hit-and-run driver on the highway. They never caught whoever did it. I guess her spirit won't rest until they do. Nathan and Heather were speechless. Won't you come inside for coffee or tea, said the woman. You've had a shock. Come in and sit down. No, thank you, but no, we're late, Heather said, and we have to get going. After exchanging uncomfortable goodbyes, the newlyweds departed as they had arrived in stunned silence. Okay guys, that's it for this video. Sorry if you could hear my stomach rumbling. I guess I'm a bit hungry. I should probably go eat a snack or something. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for plenty more Halloween themed videos. I'll be doing them throughout the month of September and the months of October. I'll try to do at least one a week. There might be weeks where I do a couple Halloween themed ones and other weeks where there'll just be one Halloween video and just a normal video, but we'll see. And of course, if you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. Okay, thanks.